This is Coaster Daddy here today to do my first ever top 10 coaster video. I'm just going to jump right into it. This is my top 10 coasters of late 2018. Enjoy. Starting off my list, barely making it into my top 10 is Raptor at Cedar Point. Right before I started doing this video, I actually had Gatekeeper at the number 10 spot, and it was there for a while, but then I got to thinking about it, and those two rides have always been kind of interchangeable to me, which I know is probably triggering to a lot of people. But I just think Gatekeeper is such a fun ride, and I love it. I think it does what it is meant to do great. But when I really thought about it at the last minute, quite literally, I'm just like, I can't put Gatekeeper over Raptor. So Raptor's at the number 10 spot. This is just a really intense, old school B&M invert. And it has some really great moments. That helix at the end is so intense. So intense. And it has 6 inversions. It's a pretty smooth ride for the most part. I've had a couple very rough rides on it, but usually it's very smooth. So I'm not going to fault it much for smoothness. It's just a great, intense ride. One that you definitely need to get on if you go to Cedar Point. Coming in at the number 9 spot is Thunderbird at Holiday World. This is a B&M wing coaster, which has a launch, so it's really unique and stands out among all of the other wing coasters that exist. And because of the launch, it's also much more forceful than other wing coasters, including Gatekeeper. This ride is excellent. I mean, it's so smooth. It has some decent force to it. It's not extremely intense, but it has enough force, has 4 great inversions, has some great theming to go along with it. The station looks beautiful, and there's some, that shed theming, which some of the inversions go through in different parts of the ride. It's just a really fun ride, and it really sticks out at Holiday World among their collection of world-class wooden coasters. This definitely stands out, and it's a much welcomed addition, and I'm really glad that they ended up getting this. Just a truly unique ride, something that's really outstanding. Get on down to Holiday World and make sure you ride this. Coming in at the number 8 spot, we have Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point, the OG hyper coaster. Of course, this was the first coaster to break the 200-foot height barrier. And a lot of people criticize this now for being rough. I have to disagree with that. I do not think it's a rough ride. It is slightly bumpy. It's an old aero coaster, and it's going to have some bumpiness to it. I mean, that's just how it is. But it's not a rough ride at all. The first half of the ride is somewhat lackluster. I mean, it has a great first drop, but then after that, it's just kind of meh. But then you go through that turnaround, which is the roughest part of the ride, and then you got these, I believe there's 6 ejector bunny hills at the end, and the airtime on these bunny hills is so phenomenal. Honestly, this is probably some of the best airtime in the park. I mean, it's pretty close to Steel Vengeance. Steel Vengeance has a lot of airtime, but Magnum probably has the best airtime in the park. I mean, it's so overlooked. It kind of stinks, but Magnum just gets really overlooked nowadays, especially that great airtime. This is just a really fun ride that I could marathon all day if I really wanted to. Very good ride. Coming in at the number 7 spot, we have Maverick, of course, at Cedar Point. It starts off with a great 95-degree beyond vertical drop, which just throws you out of your seat. An awesome moment for sure. And this ride doesn't focus on airtime, but it has a couple great airtime moments, like that first drop. And then there's an awesome camelback hill that it flies over, and that's an awesome airtime moment. 2 inversions, which is a horseshoe roll. That's probably my least favorite part of the ride. The inversions are not great, but doesn't take away anything from the ride. Then, of course, you got that intense second launch, which is amazing. I mean, the second half of the ride, it flies. Maverick is just a truly incredible experience. Very smooth. Definitely a must ride if you go to Cedar Point. And of course, its neighbors are among the best in the world as well. Coming in at the number 6 spot, we have Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. Of course, this is known for formerly being called Steel Phantom, which opened in '91, and then it got reworked into Phantom's Revenge, opened in 2001. and they replaced the 4 inversions from Steel Phantom with this huge overbanked turn, and they increased the length of that second drop by 3 feet to 228 feet. Phantom's Revenge reaches 85 miles an hour, and it's a very short ride. It only has 3,200 feet of track, but the few bunny hills at the end of the ride are the strongest ejector airtime I've experienced. It is so intense. Those bunny hops are incredible and truly breathtaking. Phantom's Revenge is just a short, sweet ride that hits you with the airtime. It's phenomenal. Coming in at the number 5 spot, we have the Raven at Holiday World. I recently reviewed this ride, so I suggest going to check that out. But the Raven is a very short ride. It's a classic wooden coaster built in '95 by Custom Coasters International. This put Holiday World on the map, and of course now everybody loves Holiday World, and this is what got it all started. This was considered basically to be the top wooden coaster in the world for a long time, and even though it's been overshadowed by Voyage in recent years, nevertheless Raven is an excellent ride. It's packed with intensity, very high speed. It just flies through the woods right by all of those trees, and it is truly an incredible experience. It has a big drop, midway through the ride, like big, 61-foot drop. Really fun, really intense ride. Definitely something all enthusiasts should get on at some point. Coming in at the number 4 spot, I think is a criminally underrated coaster by enthusiasts, is Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldameer. This ride has tons of airtime. It's very intense. It just feels so wild and out of control. It goes over the highway. It has a couple hills that fly over it, and those hills provide some excellent airtime. There's 3 tunnels on the ride, and those tunnels are amazing at night when it's pitch black. Has a couple 90-degree bank turns that dip down into the ravine, and this ride just hauls from go. I mean, from start to finish, you're just flying, being thrown all over, flying out of your seat, and it does not let up until you hit those final brakes. Ravine Flyer 2 is truly an excellent coaster. One of my favorite all-time coasters by far. It will always be one of my personal favorites. Coming in at the number 3 spot, we have the coaster everyone loves to hate, which is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. And this ride gets criticized a lot by enthusiasts for being quote-unquote forceless, which it's definitely not the most intense ride. It's very fast, being a giga coaster. It travels 93 miles an hour. I would not say it's forceless. It's still a pretty intense ride, just not, it's a lot more graceful than other giga coasters. It doesn't really focus on airtime either. It has a few decent airtime moments, but definitely doesn't focus on that. It more just consists of lots of spread out overbank turns, and it's just a really fun ride. Extremely smooth. I mean, there's no roughness to this ride whatsoever. It's almost 20 years old at this point. It flies through the layout, has over 6,000 feet of track, so it's a very long ride, and an amazing drop in my opinion. You get the best view out of any coaster at Cedar Point, I think, at Millennium Force. And this will just always be one of my personal favorite rides, despite not being the most intense. It is truly a phenomenal ride. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we have the Voyage at Holiday World. For about 3 years, this was my number 1 coaster, and it is so long. It's a huge wooden coaster. It basically looks and functions like a hypercoaster, even though it doesn't reach 200 feet, but it just goes out into the woods and flies through these 90-degree bank turns. It has a lot of tunnels, lots of airtime moments, and the airtime on this coaster is actually pretty weak, to be honest, but there's a lot of it, several airtime moments, and it just flies over these hills. And even when it hits that mid-course break, it loses a lot of its speed, but somehow it just gains back all of its momentum when it goes down that triple down drop after that. And you're just hauling up until the final breaks. This is a truly great ride, an amazing first drop. It's secluded from everything else. I mean, you can't really see much of it from the park, which is great. Voyage is truly a phenomenal experience. Has a rough, out of control, classic wooden coaster feel to it. and just something all enthusiasts need to experience at some point. And at the number one spot, we all seen this one coming. Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. What is there to say about this that hasn't been said already? It has a great drop, has probably my favorite element on any coaster I've ridden, which is that huge outer bank turn, which you get ejected out of your seat. I mean, you're out of your seat that whole element. You go over that overbank and you just get thrown out of your seat and you stay out of your seat the whole time. And this ride is so smooth. It's the first and so far only RMC that I've ridden. Glossy smooth. I mean, it feels like there's nothing even there. It's amazing. 4 great inversions that are very well placed. Lots of airtime. Of course, this has more airtime than any coaster on the planet. And a lot of the airtime moments are not the strongest, but it's strong enough, and there's a couple really great ejector moments like that outer bank turn. And this is just truly in a world of its own. This coaster is leagues above the rest, certainly in terms of anything I've ridden. And even though it's so predictable, this definitely deserves to hold the number one spot. It's truly a phenomenal ride. I believe that there's nothing else like it. Steel Vengeance really just has the total package. I'm usually not a person that is huge on inversions, but Steel Vengeance, it places them so well and it works great with everything else. Steel Vengeance truly has it all. So definitely get to Cedar Point, get on Steel Vengeance. It's worth it. Thank you all for watching my first top 10 coaster video. This is Coaster Daddy. Happy New Year, everyone.